there are examples throughout the repertoire where one hand needs to quickly move from one part of the keyboard to another. Now, in this video, we're going to focus on the left hand. So that could be something like a Chopin waltz, right, where we have a big leap of more than an octave. It could be something that you might find in a nocturne or a nocturne-like accompaniment, like in this Rachmaninoff, where again, we begin with an octave, but then we have a leap where the fifth finger moves more than an octave away from where it was, right? And it could be even in something like stride piano patterns in jazz. Now, in each of these cases, I see students often make one fatal error, and ironically, I call it being a good student. Here's the error. Did you catch it? I'm going to play it again, more slowly. There's a little hitch in the execution. There's a little something that stops our movement from being fluid. And what it is a pause and a double checking that our hand moved to the right position before we play. So it happens usually at the top of a leap where the hand moves and it might hover and then play, or we might move and the fingers come to rest on the keys that we need and then we play. Now, I call this being a good student because the root of the problem is our desire to play the right notes. That is a good thing, right? But it's not a good thing when that desire to play the right notes breaks the fluidity of our movement. That pause, while it may not cause a problem at a slow tempo, it may not cause a problem even at a slow practice tempo, it may not cause a problem in a really slow piece of repertoire, but it is going to add a lot of tension in our arm at faster tempi, and at a certain point, it's going to prohibit us from ever being able to play faster. If we're always pausing and hovering every time we need to go back and forth, there's a lot of tension because my arm is always needing to stop and then change direction and then move and stop and change direction again. So I'm always pulling on the playing mechanism. So let's fix this problem. Sometimes in order to break a habit like this, we need to exaggerate the opposite. So the first place we're going to go is not how we're going to perform this eventually. It's an exaggeration to break the bad habit. So across our leap, I'm using C sharp and a C sharp minor chord in an inversion up at the top. This is part of Chopin's famous waltz. Yes. So across the leap, we're going to make a big semicircle. So we're going to draw something like this shape as we play. And it's going to be quite high. Off the key, we release, we draw a semicircle in the air, and it always stays in motion all the way until we play. So notice, there's no pause anywhere within this circle. Notice how slow that movement is, right? And how high the peak of the circle is. The higher the peak of the circle, the more accuracy we're going to feel as we approach the upper note or the upper chord that we have to play, because we're going to play with mostly a downward motion rather than approaching it sideways, right? So high peak and one fluid movement. There's no pause, no hovering, no resting on the keys. So how do we make sure that the second half of our semicircle is accurate? The upper note or the upper chord. Practice starting to aim for that new chord at the peak of the circle. So we're going to start here aiming for it, not when the hand is getting close to playing. We're going to start when the hand's very far away. We aim, we can come straight down into that chord. Now, you might find it helpful to aim for one of the fingers that needs to play, not all three or however many you have in your excerpt. So try out and experiment with thinking about different fingers. For some of you, aiming for 5 or the lowest pitch in the chord that you need to play, that's going to be the most helpful. For others of you, aiming for the thumb or the highest pitch is going to be the most helpful. So experiment with those two. Now, I haven't personally seen aiming for a middle note to work for most students, but again, you might be different. So experiment with that too. Experiment with aiming for whatever the middle note is being played with, whether that's second finger, third finger, whatever it happens to be. As this feeling of creating a semicircle above the keys becomes more and more natural, we're going to decrease or lower the peak of that circle, right? So we're going to go from a high peak, which was really accurate. We're going to make that more efficient by lowering the peak of our semicircle. It's going to be a little harder to achieve accuracy, but it's a more efficient movement. So we're compromising now between the two, between efficiency which would be getting there as fast as possible, and between accuracy, having a little bit of a higher trajectory, right? So once we feel that we can lower the peak a little bit, we're still not hovering or pausing, and we have 100% accuracy. Now we're going to lower that peak all the way down till we're just above the surface of the keys as we move and go across our leap. Still, no pause, no hovering, no double checking. We start to aim for the notes we need right here. Just like we did when the peak was up here. Now we're aiming right here and straight through. Okay? Once you feel like you can do that and there's still no pausing or hovering, then we can start to speed the movement up and we can make this faster and faster as much as we need for our excerpt, okay? So if you've been following these steps, we should no longer have those pauses or those hovers. We shouldn't be double checking or hitching our motion across our leap. And we should feel just as confident or even more confident than before we started this practice. But you need to watch out as you speed up your execution of this, because I see over and over again students who think they have it inadvertently reintroduce that pause. And as soon as that starts to happen, we're undoing all of the good work that we just did. So it would be a great plan to daily revisit creating a bit of a higher peak with no pause at a slow tempo, work that high peak down to a lower one, to more efficient movement, and then start to speed up again. Okay? So why is this video called Why Risk is Important? It's because most students feel that it's really risky to not double check that they're going to play the right notes. But taking that risk and taking it in a controlled environment like what we've built here is super important in learning how to navigate leaps accurately and quickly and easily and in a way that's technically very efficient. If you found this video helpful, please give it a thumbs up and comment down below what piece it is that you're going to apply this skill to. And remember that I have a private community called Next Level Pianist Academy, where we have 8 Zoom sessions per month that are just for members. You get access to all 35 hours of my course content, which is also always growing, and where I give away 1 free private lesson with me every single month. There's a link to check out all the details about that program in the description down below. I will see you in the next video.